Hope you're ready. So we're going to get started. This is Empower Hour Live. This is October 15th. We're on a Friday. We're getting that awesome feeling, ready for the weekend, plug in for our last day of the week, get what we got. We got Julian on today. Julian, I want to tell you a silly story really quickly, and everybody out there. So I had never met a Julian before. When my freshman class, I joined this like freshman learning community so that I moved from a small town. I graduated with 85 people and I went to a bigger university, Georgia State University. And in my very first class, there were like 300 people in my very first class. Well, that was like my whole high school. Right, I was so overwhelmed. So I joined this freshman learning community so that I could move around and get to know people. And I never met a Julian before. And there was a Julian in the class. And we had to go around and say an adjective in our name or whatever. So I was brilliant Blaine. Of course. Of course. What else do you pick for B, And so Julian, this guy named Julian stands up and he's like, I'm Juju being Julian. And it was so funny to me because that's not a description at all. So every time that I talk to you, I always want to call you Juju being Julian. So if that slips out, please forgive me.
I'm sure someone else is going to do it for fun. I can see Logan right now. He's going to be using that at every meeting we have now, I'm sure. Great. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome. We're getting to, but what I learned, hello, Juju. But what we learned is you actually are like Frasier, justifiably Julian would have been a good one, but we were 18. What did we know? He probably didn't even know what that meant.
Yeah.
But I learned you actually go by people call you, all your friends, and they call you Sado.
They just call me Sado, yeah. That's been the easiest way to go because, we've talked about this, but Julian is my AKA name. That was one of the things that helped me get through the traumatic experiences growing up. I kind of reinvented myself and had an image of who I wanted to be. And my middle name is Hawaiian and it stands for Jewel of the family. So Julian became my doppelganger in my own head and it helped me deal with some of those things and it became my personality. And when I met people, I introduced myself as Julian and I separated myself from those dysfunctional people in my life. And I've been Julian ever since. So it's kind of weird because in California, you can have an AKA on your driver's license. I could put on there, I'm Prince. I can put on there, I'm, Britney Spears, that person. I can do that. And they'll put it on your driver's license because it's an entertainment industry world there. So, but in Texas where I live now, they're like, no, what's your birth? so now I have two names. So yeah.
What is your, I know Fred is your first name, right?
Yeah, Fred's my first name.
What's your middle name?
Sakupa, which is from my tribal family in Hawaii. That means jewel of the family. So
it's so fascinating. And then Julian, I have a given name too. I gave myself a name as well to help me with the traumatic experience of my life too. So, but I kept Blaine. Blaine is my name. I love Blaine, but I added on a Beam, which is what we were talking about with this is what that. So Blaine Beam is what I go by. Because it just helps me remember to be myself. When you're yourself, you get more things done, which is what we're talking about today. Actually, it's a great segue.
That's right.
Yeah. So let's get going. Are y'all ready to feel empowered today? We have so much to go over. I have like 15 questions to ask you. Christy said authenticity. Craig said,
I know Christy from somewhere. I got to talk to Christy one day.
Well, Christy sits right over here in the office behind me, pretty much. Yeah. Christy is somebody worth knowing. So, all right. So I'm going to ask the first question, and then we're going to kind of spitball because we didn't prepare because we like the idea of like improv.
Yeah, we have no preparing whatsoever.
It's because we know what we're talking about. You know what you're talking about.
That's right.
All right. So the first things first is we've titled this like the science of human personal development, and you've been brought on to EPM in a new role as EVP of Leadership and Development, and we have this whole neuroscience background. So in your words, how do you describe like personal development and the science of personal development? What does that mean to you?
Ironically, it's not motivation, and that's the thing about it. Motivation is like a song. You listen to a song you like as a dance song, you get all happy, but then when it's over, you're back to wherever you felt. So motivation is a moment, but it's really about understanding the behaviors that are repetitive that have not put you to where you want to be versus thinking about where you want to be. It's literally focusing on observing yourself and figuring out, what am I doing that's preventing me from being where I want to be? Because that is the true nature of really understanding how to change, is first figure out why you're not changing. And I think that's the key to really leadership and development, is really understanding and not overthinking it too. Like once you recognize it, then act on it. Because you have to get in the habit of acting on things, because the more you act, the better chances you are hitting the mark, right? So you want to keep acting on it versus really strategizing for a year before you make a jump to try things. So I would say that's really what it's all about. L&D is about developing those opportunities for people to kind of observe themselves and then make choices, which is really the only thing we can do different than any animal in the planet, is make a choice. So I love that.
I love that too. Observe yourself and make choices. That's a really good thing. When consciousness is action, you know, Christy is there. She got that. And that's really cool for me too. Like, especially right now, thinking about like, how do you do, like you get stuck in your head. How do I do this? 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 But what you're saying is you don't actually need to know like every single step along the way. You just need to get in the habit of starting the action.
Right. So it's like, I have people that when I was doing executive coaching, one of the things I've noticed, I met a lot of successful, very wealthy people, but they were dying at 50, right? I mean, and because they were so unhealthy. And so I would say, instead of saying go to the gym, I would say, what is the thing that stops you from going to the gym? Well, I'm tired. Okay, so what, I wouldn't have them go to the gym the first day. I would have them just wake up, and so get used to waking up, and then get out of bed. And then once they get out of bed, then go to the door. Then also go drive to the gym. Okay, don't go in, just drive. After a while, you start saying, I'm here already, I might as well go. But you end up, because you're acting, you're getting closer to the mark. But if you keep strategizing, one day I'm going to go all the way to the gym and work out, and your vision of that is somebody sweating and all buffed up and everything, I'm not that guy, you've automatically shot yourself down to just one day wishing. And so it's the act of doing, not the thought of motivating yourself to be at the end result. But that's how I've been living it, and that's how it's changed my world, to kind of focus on the steps and not the end result all the time.
Someone recently introduced me to the idea of you count to 5 and then get up. So they were like, what you do is you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, that's Robin. She has that book. Oh yeah, I forgot her last name.
Yeah, I forget it. That's what they gave me the book.
Yeah.
And so you just like, a lot of people say that really helps them, and it's very in line with what you're saying. But Christy asked the question, does the momentum build as you take action?
Absolutely, because your synapses in your brain becomes habitual. Everything you do, if you do things for 3 days, it actually takes about 21 days to create a habit, but your subconscious starts pulling you in that direction. So the goal is to actually really fight the urge not to do for a little while, but then momentum. It's like brushing your teeth at night. I know people that hated it, but now they can't go to bed without doing it because they've gotten momentum, and their body's now almost like required to do it. And same thing goes on a negative. If you drink all the time, you're going to start wanting to drink all the time. So your body's going to lean towards those behaviors. And so absolutely.
All right, so that's my first question then. What questions should we be asking ourselves about our own personal development?
Wow, to be honest with you, first of all, you got to be honest with yourself. What are you afraid of? Right? I mean, I love asking questions that are not normal. We like to make sure we are always feeling positive. In today's world, if you feel any negative, it's considered a negative, right? It's like, but negative is just the opposite. It's the other side of the coin of positive. They come together. There's no such thing of having positive without the negative. So you have to kind of look at the things that you don't want to look at to be able to see the things you want to look at. So what are you afraid of? And what does it take for you to retreat? Like, what is it that you do when you need to have quiet time? Do you get recluse and go to your room and like eat bonbons and watch movies all day? Do you cry it out? Do you take long walks? Then what are you quitting that you should? Like, what are the things that you don't continue? Like, what does you start because you want to, but then you don't? And that's when you start to really understand who you are. And then why do you quit? Is it through, you're always looking for some kind of, I call it actually validation. A lot of us are so used to validation because we get stuck as children being validated. And then when we get into adulthood, we all of a sudden, it's like no one's recognizing me. And it goes back to childhood when your parents say, oh, you're so good at that. And by the way, whoever said they had twins, this is one of the NLP things I would say that I would beg any parent to do. Instead of telling a kid that they're good at something, and here's is really important, subconsciously, don't tell a kid they're good at something, because as soon as they go out into the world and they see somebody better, they feel like a failure by nature. But if you say, I can tell you worked hard at that, that teaches people, the kids, to work hard at something because they're being recognized for the hard work, not the end result. And that is a big part of our subconscious. When we don't feel like we're getting validated, we tend to shut down. And that is a trigger of most people because we all grew up with some type of parent or something of that nature. So I would say those are some of the things I would say. And then also reward yourself for what have you overcome. Look at some of the trials you've been through, realizing, hey, I got through that. So those are some of the questions I would ask myself.
Oh, that's so fascinating. Somebody recently, so in my personal time, I like to sing and record music and write. I love to do this. And so when I'm not thinking about work, I'm thinking about that.
You're a
And
musician?
I'm a writer. So I like to do that. So anyway, so I shared, I'm really excited about something I'm working on currently. So I shared with my friend, and instead of saying you did good, he said, I can tell you worked really hard at that. And the overwhelming joy that hit me of knowing that someone validated me on the work that I did, not on the quality, but on like, wow, like I can really tell you that really, really worked for me. And I didn't think about that till you were saying this right now, like how that translated to my mind. And it made me go back and start working on it immediately more.
People don't realize the power of words. I mean, through ancient Egyptian Mesopotamia, they talk about the power of words. Even Confucius said it. They asked him, like, if you become emperor, what was the first thing you do? And he says, I would teach my people great words. And in understanding those words, they become great because words are so powerful. I mean, just the conversations you and I have had privately, we've had some interesting conversations, I would say. And the words we use have such energy. They tell the cells what hormones and what we should be producing, and that changes your body, your energy, your dopamine, your heart rate, everything changes through words. And so your friend was smart to do that. Maybe he heard it from NLP practitioner, I don't know, but it's really powerful.
Yeah. So Christy has asked a few questions. I'm going to ask her questions really quickly. Do you suggest starting off, this is going back to like do you suggest starting off by facing your fears or rather than avoiding them?
Well, first of all, yeah, fears are just an opportunity to really grow. I think Eddie even said that, and it's true. He's absolutely right. I say most of us by nature want to avoid discomfort, and actually media, marketing, I was in the entertainment industry for many years. I've been behind the curtain, and I worked with some major, I would say, brainiacs behind like business, like major talking Illuminati type guys. And they know the whole conversation behind the subconscious is key to everything. So by nature, we avoid anything that's uncomfortable. And that's why marketing always makes things sound easy. You go to any TV about buy this sweeper because they show a picture of a guy sweeping and all of a sudden he's got this ugly look on his face because it's so hard to sweep with his own broom. But you buy this and you see him all happy and smiling because the subconscious is looking for something easy. So then you buy it for $39.99, right? So we're always looking for easy. So the biggest way, the thing that makes people grow is really to not believe the matrix, I would call it, the fake stuff that's not there. Facing fear is the only way to grow because it isn't fear. It's a perception of something you don't understand it to be. Because a fireman will run into a burning building because he's learned how to understand fire. He's trust in his modalities and in his team. He understands he's been trained well enough to walk right through a fire when everybody else is running the opposite direction. So you have to learn what those fears come from. So facing it means you go to the beginning. Where did it start? Where is it actually? And then challenge yourself to say, is that true now? Or is it just me reacting to that something that happened when I was 7 or when I was 12? And thank that fear for being there. And I'm talking a lot, but this is very important. Don't fight yourself. Don't get mad at yourself because you have fear, but thank you for being there because it's protected you for so long. So, and then say, I don't need you anymore. I don't need you any further. You can move on so you can grow from it. So facing your fear is definitely, but you have to do it in a way that you're actually observing yourself and talking to yourself, which is not crazy, by the way. We all talk to ourselves. So
right. I'm sorry, I got choked up. That was so moving.
Maybe being sarcastic.
Yeah. Sorry,
I'm your eye. Fix your eye, will you?
I know. All right, and then Chrissy asks, are limitations self-imposed?
Absolutely. I mean, not to some extent. I mean, you can't fly, don't jump off a building, but there are some limitations that are there. But I would say what's not limited is how you respond to them, right? So there are some limitations to some degrees, but we all have them. But I think Logan's like 6'2", I'm 5'8". I mean,
no, he's 7'4".
Or 6'4". All right. So it's like I'm limited to some extent in some of these things that I can say, okay.
He said he's 4'2".
Yeah, right. Okay. Sitting down. But it's one of those things where we do have some limitations, but I embrace those limitations, but recognize your strengths as well and understand that you need both. If me and Logan were going to have to deal with somebody, he'd hit him high or hit him low. It's like we work together. It's all in synchronicity.
Yeah, I call it the harmony of all things.
Yeah.
So you have to have the good and the bad. It's the facts of life.
It comes with it. Yeah. Exactly.
I'm a lover, not a fighter, Logan said. So that's great. So what kind of mindset does this require?
Observation continuously. Be curious about yourself, not everybody else. I think one of the things that we really tend to do is we look at other people's actions and take offense to them without really recognizing why we're taking offense to it. It's because our perceptions aren't matching their intentions. Almost 99% of the time, my perceptions of you will never match your intentions. So, for instance, I'm new to the company. We'll talk about something funny. I can walk in and ask a lot of questions, and somebody might think I'm being a bull in a china shop. The perception is he's pushy and he's pushing himself on all these things. And my intention is I want to learn this quickly so I can get things going quickly. But those are two opposite ends of the same story. And so the goal is really to understand that. So that would be the first thing to do, is recognize that you don't react to people's perceptions, because if you do that, you're being them. You're perceiving their perceptions to be truth, and you're validating those perceptions when they're not really there. So the goal is not to take too much stock in those things and to kind of just recognize that's going to be a natural propensity towards any storming and forming and norming of any relationship. And it goes back to relationships too. I was coaching several people who wanted relationships. They were looking for love. It never fails. Looking for love. I'm looking for somebody to love me. It's like, what do you want? Well, I want this person to be this. I want them to be this. I want them to let me be me. And then as soon as they meet this person, the first thing they do is look at them like, who do you think you are? So are you letting them be them? So now they're putting on a show for you. And then you're discouraged when they're now show their true colors. You're like, they lied to me. It's like, no, you had this perception and you pushed on that. And so now instead of them being true to themselves, they started mirroring, trying to be something you wanted them to be. So you started with something that was ingenuine. So the goal is just to be, and I would say that's be. I kind of rambled on that one, but I hope that makes sense. Yeah, BB, Diamond B. Yeah,
Diamond B. No, you didn't ramble. That does make a lot of sense, and that really helps, because I think mindset, kind of is always internal. So that's, without that knowing how to like switch that channel in your brain or switch that thing, it's like, well, I can't do anything if I can't even see.
Well, like Elizabeth said, I mean, here's the thing. The goal is you're never going to find perfect, and there's no such thing as greener grass, because the grass you sit on is a grass you take care of. So if it's not green enough for you, you just focus on developing that grass, because if you jump to someone else's grass, they're nurturing theirs. But the problem is we let ours go dead, and then we say, my grass is not green. And you have to take care of your grass. If not, weeds grow, and that's a metaphor, but you know what I mean. It's like you have to take care of your own, and that's you. So, and then if you don't take care of your grass, weeds do grow. But weeds are supposed to grow. That's natural. So having an argument or having disagreements or miscommunication in business between two peers, that's part of building and tilling your land and making sure that you have a great relationship. Because if you don't do that, you don't have any history to go on that you can trust and work through things. So you have to have it. So I think it goes with, like I said, redefine struggles. It's not a struggle to not get along. It's just natural.
That's what you said. My struggle is my strength.
That's right. I live by that. Live by it.
Okay. So I'm going to ask some different kind of questions here. Moving us a little along in a different way, about you. What are your personal goals? Yeah, what are your personal goals?
It's interesting. I don't use the word goals anymore, because when I was in sales and I was in the entertainment industry, I was extremely, and it's not a negative per se, but I was extremely materialistic, and I had a lot of stuff. There was actually one point in my life where, I didn't know which car to drive, which motorcycle to take. And I would spend the whole day halfway going somewhere, turn around, get the other one, go back. I was really confused. I had so much, but I was miserable, dude. I was so unhappy because everything was almost so vain. And so it had no depth. I just was about a lot of show. So goals for me, and it's a trigger. I equate goals with things. So I stay away from wanting things, and I'm really into experiences. So I think about what kind of experiences I want to have. And and I look at what experiences are and their moments. So what moments do I want to embrace and say, I actually was there, I smelled it, not just saw it on video, but I actually could smell the air and taste the humidity. I can, those things. And so I have a lot of experiences I want to have. You know, I want to go back to Thailand. I want to experience Thailand in its totality, not as a fighter like I was, but as a person that can go and live with the monks for a week without any social media, anything, just to see what it's like to be like it was in those days, right? So I want to have those kind of experiences. And, you know, traveling a little more, I think would be another thing I want to do. My wife and I are now empty nesters, so getting out more and being able to experience things for not just vacation, but live there for a period of time to embrace the cultures is what I like to do. So it's kind of like, that's how I look at it.
So how do you define success within that new way of thought? Because that's really cool. Instead of being materialistic and a goal, I want to get this, I want to get that. You're saying, I want to experience what life has to offer. So how do you define success within that?
Every day I'm breathing is success. I mean, I don't have any material things as success. I don't worry about the economy. I don't worry about the world, because you know what we tend to do is we tend to worry about things we have no power over, and then we find reasons to be heavy about it. So I just find success is I'm happy today. I'm blessed today. You know, there is nothing health-wise, nothing to worry about. So I'm successful. I mean, I don't have anything to worry about. If Eddie calls me today and says, Julian, we need to talk, I don't get like, uh-oh, you know, because I'll tell you a quick story. Yeah, let me share the story. This is really important to understand this. And it goes back to what is success. I had an experience. So there was a while back, I was contracting with a company, consulting, and then they offered me a job. And I did that a lot because I grew up in a weird way, but I thought maybe if I take the job, then I would be happy versus going from company to company to company. So I took the job. And then what happened was I had a lot of family drama. You know, my wife had cancer for the second time. My son had his teenage drama where he was suicidal. And I was traveling literally 90% of my life. I was never home. I was leaving on Sundays, coming back on Fridays, you know, literally almost 4 weeks out of the month. And I had to do something about it. So I asked the company, I said, hey, I need to take a break, but I was supposed to speak at a conference. And they were like, you can't take a break. You have to do this conference. We're going to have this many people there. I'm like, my family's in turmoil. I need to take a break. And they said, well, if you take a break, we're going to let you go. So you know what I did? I quit.
Yeah.
Walked away. But I gave up all my contracting. I've been there for almost 2 years. So I'm like, what did I just do? And I'm driving down the street and I'm like trying to walk myself backwards because I'm like, oh crap, I just put myself in a lot of hurt. And I went to a gym that I used to, you know, just wasting time. You ever done that where you just try to waste time, trying to find something to do? There's this gym that just opened up near our house. And so I took a walk and then took a tour, just trying to distract myself. And there was a boxing bags hanging. And I was like, oh, I used to be a kickboxer. And they literally begged me to be a teacher there. And I'm like, dude, I'm gonna say how old I am, but I'm older. I was like, I haven't taught boxing in 20 years, right? And I'm like, no. And they're like, please, we'll give free membership. And I was like, all right, I'll try it one time. It'll be fun. I'll go back. So all of a sudden I went and started teaching. I had this huge class. I mean, I had all these people show up and this lady asked me to teach her daughter to box. And I'm like, okay. So I took her on, but I'm an NLP practitioner. And I noticed something about this woman, the little girl, she was a teenager. Something was off. And I was like, hey, you know, I don't know you, but I feel like there's something going on. If you ever want to talk to somebody who doesn't know anybody in your circle, I'm that guy. You can talk to me. And she cried like a banshee. And she told me, look, I'm killing myself tonight. And the only reason I'm doing this is because my mom keeps trying to get me to do something. And I don't want her to know I'm killing myself. And I stayed and talked with her for 3.5 hours and got her help. She now is a huge influencer on TikTok and helping kids with depression and helping people her age understand body image and bullying and all these things, only because I quit the job. I had no place to go. And I ended up living vicariously through an experience and embracing it. And that's what I mean by experience. It's like embracing the drama, understanding the drama brings you to a destination. There's no wrong in any of it. It's just what you're supposed to be. So that's what I want to do, experience things like that.
I'm so happy to hear you say that. I tell that to people all the time. There is no right path to life. It is only interest and disinterest. So what are you interested in, and follow that and lean into that. But this kind of leans into what Yesenia commented. She said that she has a quote on her wall that is, sometimes you will never know the value of a moment until it's a memory.
Absolutely. It is so powerful. It's so true. Everybody you come in contact with, William Wallace said it. everyone you come in contact with, leave them with the impression of increase. And that was in 1901. It just, don't be so self-ingrained that you don't recognize the energy around you. You know, it's like everyone gives you energy as well as you give energy. So feel it, you know, embrace people, and don't, you know, no one should be judgmental. A kid can sit there and have no words to you and smile, and you would love children because they don't have any judgment. And that's the key. It's like not judging anybody by your own perceptions of what you think, because your thoughts are based off of your world, and your mother raised you, my brother raised me, two different worlds. So let's just accept that.
I love that. You're speaking my language, Julian. You're always makes me so happy to hear you talk like this. How do we then, taking all of what you've said, you know, admitting what you're afraid of, kind of relaxing a bit on the you know, how hard you are on yourself, facing where do you want to start? How do you want to start? Is this just me? Where did this trigger start? Is this just me? Okay, taking all of this in, creating a new habit and acting on it. How do we move forward to improve ourselves then with all of these things, right? How do you take that?
I would tell everybody to, first of all, write. I mean, look, I have a bunch of these. I write journals, I have booklets, I write all the time. These are my mindset. I get in the morning, I get quiet, and I have writings and things that come to mind. Write down stuff, you know, and come up with ideas. And I think whoever said they have a thing on their wall, or writing on their wall, I always tell people, I have this statements, I make up my own statements. We love mythologizing people by saying, you know, Brian Tracy said this, or Anthony Robbins said this. Come up with your own. You're just as valuable. You're just as important, and you're so much more powerful than them, because now they have people around them that are looking at the market and rating their words and saying, this is what you need to say. So they've lost some of that zest and that genuinity, but you haven't. So come up with your own words, you know, come up with your own taglines, you know. And I have symbols. I had a very traumatic experience in my life and I used to start doodling these symbols, and I put meanings to those symbols, and I doodle those symbols all the time. Yeah, same thing. And you know, just know that, you know, you have to journal. You have to put in, and I say journal because there is a scientific study that shows when you write, it goes to the synapses of the brain versus typing. And so writing journals is really key, and keeping those journals, and writing a letter to yourself. You know, how you like writing a letter to yourself 5 years from now is a powerful thing too, or writing a letter to God. I wrote a letter to God as he was talking to me, and connecting all the dots, helping me see why these things happen. And that it's very powerful. And, you know, and I said, don't measure yourself by anything, just experience life. But I hate to say this publicly, but I guess I can say it personally to you guys. Know that you will fall and fail, but that is part of success. And I think that people forget that. We have to be able to fail. It's the same side of the same coin. You have to fail to feel successful. If you don't, you really don't know what success is. You don't know what success feels like. So you have to fail. It comes with the territory, you know? So don't beat yourself up because you fail. Be like scientists, just try again. Well, not scientists today. I'm not going to get into that, but because that's a whole nother discussion. So,
experiment with failure and success. I love that. And It's so good that you said that about journals, Julian. I also journal a lot. You probably don't know that. I journal a lot, and I keep all of my journals, and I have them from I literally walk in my room and I look at them, or my space where they are, and I'm like, it's me. It's that's how I recount my life. That's my you know, that is my life in those books. And how
and you don't have to write a book. You can just write a line or a paragraph.
Oh, yeah, no, it's just different things. Like some of them are like this, some of them are 15 pages, some of them are letters, some of them are poems, some of them are songs, you know, whatever comes out. But I'm so glad, because that to me does help me. It's like, okay, where am I at? What am I feeling? How do I wade through this? I have like my own path of how I do it. It does. Chrissy said it helps us show our personal evolution. And Eddie talks about this all the time too. He's like, go back and look at where you know, how you got to where you're at now. And you can see the steps of how you got there. And it'll help you see how you're not stuck. You've been making these movements and you've been doing these things. I think for me, when you're saying all of these things, what hits me the hardest is, under all of these things, the first thing you got to do is remove the pressure you place on yourself.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to our world. Everybody's so polished and everybody has all the answers. Everybody's like, follow me. This is how you can get, this is what you can do. And I think, there's some truth to some of those things, but I have a friend of mine, I won't say who, I have several of them who are in that world who are selling programs and, 1 through 3 step programs and stuff. And, they're just as insecure as most people. I would say most of them are always second guessing. Some of them live with their mother still, and they have a green screen, not really a boat, but they're trying to sell this product. And it's, some of the things that you see on so many things that are unreal. For instance, like even Amazon right now, they have like, look at my reviews, but you can buy reviews, people, there's a business out there where you just get reviews for your product. The product's through China, and so you don't know what's real anymore. And so the goal is to step back and understand that just everything you feel, everything you've been through, every feeling, I should say, every feeling you have felt, everyone from the politicians to the preachers to the celebrities have felt the exact same thing. So just know that there is no separation between you and anybody else. And I understood that when I first left entertainment and I went into corporate. And entertainment, people mythologize celebrities so much. I've seen mothers and women and people just beg to just meet somebody, and I'm like, stay back, get them out of here, And then you go to corporate, and then you see a executive or someone who's a business owner, and the people are like, oh, so and so showing up, and they get all this. It's the same feeling. And like, they're not celebrities, but we all have this tendency to mythologize people. And I think when you do that, you literally are saying, I'm intimidated by a human being. And it's like, there's nothing to be intimidated by, So understand you have just the same much power as anybody else. It's just
the only person I've ever been intimidated by was Beyonce Knowles. I 100% will admit that I didn't even get to meet her. I was 3 people away from her, and I couldn't stand. My knees were weak, and
I would say the only person I ever felt my heart palpitate different for was Michael Jackson. He came to the studio once when I was there, and I was like, "Oh, Michael," but that was it. But yeah, but Prince was. I hung out with Prince he had a house in Bel Air in California off of Sunset. Amazing house, very gothic, but he had a crush on my play sister, and he brought her into the house, brought us there. I mean, they're just people. I mean, it's kind of funny, but we keep putting them up here, so they're almost on stage for you because you keep putting them there. And when you get real with them, all of a sudden they just relax, and they're just, yeah, it's crazy.
So Liz says, Elizabeth Vasquez out in California, she said, I always say to myself, what is the worst that they can tell me? No, okay, that's fine. Move on to the next. Something will be better that can come my way, or something.
No, she said something really cool. One of the things I used to do is I visualize the worst case scenario and how would I survive it. And when you put that in your perspective, then you're like, yeah, okay, I can deal with it. She's right. I mean, that's another way of doing it. Like, what's the worst case scenario? If Eddie says, Julian, we don't need you today. What's the worst case scenario? What would happen? Okay. I mean, I can survive it. So it's like, I don't walk around with the hope he doesn't like this, or, what I mean? So she's right. This is exactly the thing to do.
When I was a kid, I was always obsessed with horror movies, and I always have dealt with anxiety. And that's been part of my, just dealing with the amount of anxiety that I feel. And I would tell myself, the worst thing that can happen is that they could literally eat me. And they're not going to. So I've already won that. So that's silly. But as a kid, I'm like, they can't eat me. And then that would get me going. It was so funny.
That's funny.
And then Christy says, expectations can cast what feels like an overshadowing and adds stress and pressure.
Yeah. Well, again, there are always expectations. And I would challenge, I love what she said, because I would love to talk about that one day. Again, going back to human nature, we find the line of survival and we feel okay with that. And I think what separates those who really go back to that success thing is to move the bar, understand that the masses live to survival. It's the exceptional to go, I'm not looking at that, it's just so many people that have done that. The man that beat the 4-minute mile had to know, even though everybody said if you did that, you're going to blow up your heart, he beat the mile. And then after that, it was only a record for 49 days. After that, everybody was doing it because he set the bar, he changed the bar. So I would say always, look at where your comfort level is and realize that your comfort level is not your friend.
That's so good. Not your friend, or is your friend because it wants to keep you comfortable, right? It wants to keep you safe. It's like, you're my friend, I love you. Let's keep you here. You're safe here.
Yeah.
So how do we, as Christy says, wrestle, listen to my country accent, how do you wrestle that line of that comfort and discomfort, that struggle versus strength,
Yeah,
that
it goes back to what I said earlier. It's the small steps, not the big accomplishments. It's Joe Rogan says it best. If you want to climb Mount Everest, you don't think about it in Santa Monica. you got to first get there, right? So you have to literally take the small steps. So it's really not focusing on the big items. It's focusing on the little steps that change you, so the big item doesn't seem so big. And it really is that simple. I mean, it's so crazy simple that is hard for people to understand. They think there's some magic juice to it. It really isn't. I mean, it's really that simple. It's the smallest little things about your belief systems, your dogma. Your dogma is your enemy, because your dogma, the definition of dogma is literally a spiritual belief that's not based off of fact. That's what the definition of dogma is. And spiritual belief, meaning in those days, it's like you have this belief system that you can't validate. And so our dogma is based off of our childhood, our experiences, our way to protect ourselves from any more struggle of embarrassment. We don't have lions chasing us anymore, or tigers, but we have ego. And the ego has been pushed as that's who you are now. You know, you're the person that can take a selfie really well. And so we have this concept that if I look bad, then I am bad. And I think that challenge those ego selves and you'll be surprised, and just start moving on those small steps. And before you know it, you're looking at a whole different person. It's completely different.
You say that and it hits so directly to my heart. So I met with my mentor outside of the company earlier this week because I needed some tough love, apparently, because that's what I was given. Yeah. And I was able to really, this is a little personal, but I deal with anxiety a lot, and I'm sick of how much that anxiety feels like. If you deal with anxiety, you know, it's like all of a sudden your heart is an ember and then your whole body is sparked on fire, and you're just left with this whirling noise in your ear, and you're like, what is going on? And I'm kind of tired after 32 years of dealing with this. So I walked it back. Where did I start? And I went all the way back to I was 3 years old when I had my first anxiety attack. And I remembered and how I came from that. And in that, you know, she was like, you are torn between what you want to do and what others want you to be, this perception you have of what others want to be. And it locks you in indecision because you don't know how to bring your authentic self in with this visual perception of what others think you should be.
Yeah, well, you know, you hit on something. So, you know, you don't have a behavioral coach, right? And I normally charge people for this, but I'm gonna tell you. All right, so here's the thing. So, you know, and what you just did, I don't know if she did this for you, but this is what behavioral coaching is all about. You have to tap into the subconscious. So again, take you back to that first feeling, right? But then you have to define that feeling. So I usually take people in a place where they can close their eyes or relax. And I say, what does it smell like in that first experience? And I say, what does the air feel like? You know, is it like a foggy? Is it clear? How large is it? I mean, I ask some crazy questions. How large? Like the room, like how large is it? And what color is it? And then, you know, I ask all these questions and I say, so give it a name. And you know, people say confusion, or when I went through my own training for this, it was perception. And so anytime you start feeling that stuff, you give it a name, because now when you name something, you have power over it. And this is kind of the whole thing about wording and language. Whenever you word something, anything you give a name to, you feel power over it. So I gave it a name, perception. So when you start feeling these things, like if I was you and I was feeling it and I gave it perception, I was like, hey, perception, thank you for being here. You've protected me in the past, but I don't need you any further. You can move on, right?
You get out of the driver's seat. Yeah.
And it's just amazing how quickly it goes away. And that is transition. And so those are some of those tricks that, you know, our subconscious is much more powerful than our conscious. And so what she's doing is tapping into that subconscious. Yeah. And it goes back to leadership, goes back to management, goes back to dealing with customers, goes back to everything. If you deal with one of our customers and they're pissing you off, it's because it's taking you back to a moment where you feel belittled, or, you know, it takes you back to something. It's not them, it's you. And so you have to really own that.
That's what she told me. It is nobody's responsibility to deal with your triggers except you. And I was like, okay. Yeah, I could do that. But it was really fascinating that you say all this, because that's exactly what she did. She took me to my subconscious mind. We named it. I said it made me feel how it made me feel and what that it meant. And then when did I really recognize what that meant? And I was like 7 years old, and I've been walking around with this like heavy burden that I placed on myself because of something as a kid I didn't understand and have the language around that has been compounded by all of these other things that have happened over time. And when I got to the root of that, it's not fixing that root. Like I can't go back in time and say like, oh, let me protect this baby Blaine.
Yeah.
But what I can do is then take that and be like, okay, now I can name it. Now I can know, oh, when I feel like this, it's because of this. It's
funny. It goes back to, like you were saying, there's a new study, I think I might have mentioned this, that there's 40,000 brain-like cells in the heart. And that is that they literally call it the mini brain now in the heart. And they just found it in 1994. It's in the science journals. It's not in the science journal in Nature. It's the Science and Nature are the two journals that scientists publish their findings. They won't come to mainstream media, but I read those every day. And that is a huge discovery, because they found that those brain-like cells really have their own thinking, their own feelings, and that comes from your childhood. So when we're trying to fix it here, we also have to fix it here. So that heart is motives, and that's what you're doing. So what you're trying to do is tap into the heart. So
yeah, and that was so funny, because that's what she kept saying. She said, "You're back in your head, get in your heart."
Yep.
You're back in your head, get in your heart. Yep. That was so fascinating. So Jen Reese says, oh, that reminds me of the new Disney movie, Luca. They named their subconscious Bruno, and then they kept telling Bruno to be quiet so they could keep pushing boundaries.
That's awesome. I haven't seen it, Disney movie in a long time, since my kids are grown, but I have a granddaughter now, so I'm sure I'll be watching some more Disney movies. So that's awesome.
I think that movie is the one where like they are creatures from the Black Lagoon in Italy or something, and they can turn into humans. I don't know. You should watch it. It's on Disney Plus. So she said it's on Disney Plus. Does going through the senses bring us into the feeling? This is what Christy asks.
Well, your senses are heightened all day long. You got like 40 billion senses going on every second, and that's what's crazy. Your conscious only holds 2,000. So it's like, yeah, it could bring feelings, but what happens is we disregard them and move to the focus of what we're looking at. So what the senses do is, it's almost like what meditation is good for, Tai Chi, martial arts, any kind of activity that makes you focus is meditation. So senses are always heightened, but you have a billion feelings all the time. Even looking at Blaine and I right now, if you're seeing our face, we might remind you of something from way back when you're a kid. Blaine's beard might remind you of something, and there's a sense there that's going on, but you ignore it. So it really depends on what you consciously want to focus on. I think what we need to do is, like to our question, is really understand how we're reacting to those senses. Are we giving too much validation and energy to the wrong senses over time? That's what I would think about.
Oh, good. Now you said something really quickly that was kind of a new thought maybe for me. Meditation is anything you focus on.
Yeah, I mean, we tend to, like I said, we commercialize everything. Meditation is not, crossing your legs and your fingers. There's some powers to those things, but anything you focus on, if you're doing gardening, that's the sense of meditation. Meditation simply means single-mindedness, is where your mind is focused on one thing. So that's why some people breathe, some people count, some people, it's not like you have to listen to certain Hertz music, and you can just literally focus, and that quiets the mind. So that's all it is.
Although for about a month, the only thing I listened to at one point I had an accident, and all I listened to was 417 Hertz. That's all I listened to in my ear. I was like, that's it. But I like that idea. Meditation is anything that you focus on, because that's been my disconnect with meditation. Because I'm like, I'm sitting here or whatever, but like I am meditating just as much when I'm journaling, more so in a way, because I'm being very active in my body at that time, in my, so I'm glad that you could say that. And that reminds me of this movie that is also on Disney Plus called Soul. They play music in that, and they talk about like when you get in that zone and he's playing his piano, like he goes into this world where he's like taps into the spirituality of whatever he's doing, and that's meditation.
That's all meditation is. It gets you in the alpha, gets you in the theta waves, and takes away the busyness of the brain, the beta. Your brain is just so focused on reacting to everything in front of you. So yeah, it's a good thing to do.
And it's like we've kind of covered a lot of Disney movies. Are they trying to teach us something?
I know. It's like, I don't know. Did you get some sponsorship?
I know. We'll go into the other one about the emotions, Inside Out. We'll talk about that. Allowing that movie's purpose is like all of your emotions are effective for you. They all tell you something.
They all do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So listening to how are you reacting, and are you spending too much time on the wrong part of that?
We normally do, because we end up sharing that feeling towards with somebody else. And we, it's almost like I use this weird thing, like a customer had a situation with a loan officer. A loan officer asked them for one document, and they were so frustrated, they called and spoke to the manager. He's asking for all these documents. It's like, because we tend to make things bigger than they are. It's like, if you're afraid of spiders, and I'll ask, what'd you see? He was this big. It's like, he was that big, but your emotions are describing it, not the actuality. So that's the same thing how emotions act. They almost like gamma ray it. They make it so big that you feel like you can't get past it, when actuality is, it's not as big as you're making it. But we get habitually into those emotions because that becomes our identity. There's Joe Dispenza talks about, we identify with the same behaviors every day. And so if you come in with, I have problems with so-and-so, and you say that enough times, you're going to make problems unconsciously. You're going to look for reasons to have problems because you keep telling yourself, I have problems with this person. So it's really important to understand your subconscious that way.
There was something that you just said, and I wanted to like pick up on it because I was going to ask a question, but dang it if I didn't forget.
It's all good. It's all good. We were talking about like how to separate, like how to lead yourself. And that was the concept of this, right? So, I mean, again, it goes back to what we were saying, is understanding that you are just like everybody else. No one is special. Everyone is just is, right? And so you have just as much power. You can learn and do anything you want when you put your mind to it, which is true. And like, we tend to stop after high school. We expect a kid in 4th grade to graduate 4th grade and get to the 5th grade. And all of a sudden, after 12th grade, everything's on you. But as a children, we're pushed to expectations and we get there. But then after 12th grade, high school passes, and we're like, well, I can do what I want. And then a lot of us don't do anything. So we have to have that understanding that you can, and treat it just like high school or, junior high school, and just, you're going to take some time. It's not going to happen like a movie. We see movies and we see the happy ever after, the end. It's just continuation, so that's all it is.
When I was a kid, I could not envision life after the age of 27. I didn't know what that would look like, because I was okay, you go to college, I'm gonna go get my grad, I'm gonna then I get married, I have children, of course it's a different life. And then when I turned 27, I was like, what do I do? Life goes on.
Yeah.
And that's when I really felt my life began, because that's when I had to plug in and actually decide what I wanted.
And you might change. What you want now might not be what you want 3 years from now. It could literally change on you. So we can be completely okay with that, So I'd say what I dreamed of, what I wanted when I was 20s, I would never want now, so it's just one of those weird things.
So we have about 7 minutes left of this call. I like to keep it on time. Thank you so much for all the advice you've given us. So I want to bring it back to business. All right. Okay. So you've done all of these steps. You've gone through, you know what you're afraid of, you know how to hit it, you know where you're putting your, all of these things that we've talked about. And you know what you want to do, and you're ready for some personal development and leadership, right? How do you go to your leader? And what are some words or some ways that we can go to our leader and say, hey, I want to try this, or how can I how do we talk to our leaders about our personal development?
So one of the biggest misnomers is we expect leaders to help us. When people, just like personally, like I'll use kids, for example, we're much more inclined to help people that are helping themselves first. So you remember, everything's on Google. I mean, there is nothing under the sun you can't find, right? So if you want to learn something, first start learning it, and then share what you're learning. And is there any ways you can support me continuing this learning, because here's the trajectory I'm on. And most leaders should be able to say, wow, that's amazing, because that's really the key. You start doing without any suggestions. If you want to learn underwriting, if you want to learn how to be a loan officer, you want to learn more about leadership and management, then start taking courses or looking at these free things that are available, from LinkedIn to Google's to programs that are out there, books, and start learning about it, and then having discussions about what you're learning to your leader. And that way the perception of you is, this is what you're doing, not what you're waiting to be done. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And also it kind of helps me personally think about like, oh, like that's I don't know. I just make that, you saying that just clicked some things in my brain. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
remember what I was going to say a while ago. I don't remember where I heard this, and it could have been a call with EPM or personal call. I'm not sure, but someone was recently talking about emotions are very patient. We were talking about emotions a while ago, and emotions are very patient, and they will wait until you, they will like wait until you, if you keep stuffing it down and you go into like a little ball.
They call passive aggressive is what they call that.
Right. Yeah. And then it's like your emotion will wait patiently, and then it'll be like, boom, you can't wait anymore.
Yeah, it's usually against somebody who did nothing. They said good morning wrong to you, and it's like, what? So yeah, so absolutely. So patient, it's tricky. So Christy, I would love to, and that's one of the things I've done several times, and I would love to do it again. I create what they're calling inner circle, and kind of like what we're doing now, but it's very, it's not scripted. We talk about anything under the sun, and that is business development, because what we're doing is we're learning how to communicate and interact, and it'll be executives. I usually have people from other countries and businesses will be on there, and frontline employees literally schooling executives and vice versa. It's so cool because you don't know each other, but you're talking the same language. And it's really about knowing thyself. That's really what it is. It's really a lot of fun.
I have this vision for something called Partners in Empowerment. Pie, because we're all a piece of the pie of EPM, Partners in Empowerment. And it's exactly what you're describing here. You call where you can just like encourage each other and breathe into each other the same language that you have, and know that somebody's got your back and can support you and help you see through potential issues that you're having or struggles, and share ideas and thoughts. And that's exactly, I like that name though. It's like your piece of the pie.
I like it. Pie. I like it. So yeah, I would love to do that. So we'll see what happens with that. That'd be great. I love these kind of conversations because that's how I grow too. I mean, I learned some stuff here for not just Disney movies, but I did learn from just some of the statements that were made. So I think it's awesome.
So what is your lasting impression you want us to take away from this Empower Our Live segment?
Take what you want. I just hope you guys can see my genuine desire to just help people. That's my why in life. I don't care what I do as long as I know I'm helping others. That's been my number one thing. Ever since I was a kid, I always thought I was a superhero. That was my way of surviving things. I wanted to learn how to fight and flip. So I was a gymnast and a boxer, a kickboxer. But I was always wanting to help people. And so that's my nature. And so I learn so I can share. At the same time, I'm still learning. There's so much I can learn from everybody else. So I wish, people can see the genuinity. I'm not here to throw down all this knowledge. I just love the human design. It's the most fascinating thing is the thing that we have, which is a conscious choice in life to think about our thinking. To me, that's baffling, So I hope everybody can embrace that and read more. That's one thing I would say. Read. Don't just listen to inserts of things. Literally read things, books. Highlight, get your own books. I think that's a lost skill. We're very much into audible books, which is okay, but you learn so much to quiet your mind and sit and read and find a book that interests you and read through the end, read the whole thing. And it's just really a lot of fun to have books that really inspire you to move forward and to think differently. So that would be it.
Awesome. And Julian, I got to tell you about this idea. I worked at the zoo before I came to EPM and introduced to all these new things about animals. So how journaling and ducks go together. I want to talk to you about that. So
I really want to hear about that.
All right, everybody. This has been Empower Our Live, October 15th. I hope you all feel a bit more empowered today. Reach out to Julian. Chrissy just asked a question that said any book recommendations that you can. Julian, are you available for people to reach out to you for any kind of recommendation?
I wish somebody reached out to me. No one talks to me. So please reach out to me. I love to meet everybody. We can do a quick Zoom hello. Right now I have the time. I would love to meet everyone. As you guys want to reach out, I'd love to get to know you, see what you're doing, and see if we can connect in any way. Okay, awesome.
That's what Jackie said that she's bugging you soon. So thank y'all so much for joining us today. He's going to show us one look. Do you want to show us one?
I was going to say the book, The Law of Human Nature by Robert Greene. It's a great book. I mean, I'll just go there because there's no story there. The Laws of Human Nature, a great book.
There you have it. The Laws of Human Nature. Goodbye, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you next week. We have a fun guest next week. Bye, y'all.